There you go.
It's recording in progress, so I guess you're voting.
I just heard that. Okay. So I was just kind of giving you a tour of the screen. This is a check approval screen. Down here, you have your vendor information. Up here, you have your payment information that came from the caseworker. The caseworker put in that this is housing, rent, the case number, of course. This other field is very interesting. The caseworker has a field when they're submitting a check request. It's called Other. The way we use it at Holy Family is kind of like passing a note from the caseworker to the treasurer. Like in this case, I'm saying mail it, and I put my name, JP. I might say deliver it, but give it to me, because I'm the one who's actually going to deliver it to the leasing office. So you might want to encourage your caseworkers to use that field to pass you any kind of special notes that they want to tell you about this transaction. So that happens, though, that gets created in with the caseworker when they're submitting the check request. Okay, down here is the vendor information. And I don't know if you're familiar with the accordion kind of technique we use throughout all CMS. That's the vendor. If you want to see the client, you click on it, an accordion, it expands and it contracts. That's the objective, and allows you to see more information about this client without you going to another screen. So that's a technique that we use throughout CMS. They're called accordions. Okay? So now what we're going to do is approve this check, and we're going to walk through the approval process. So this is for rent, and what is required is a check number. Now let's talk about check numbers. Check numbers must be unique, and I mean unique. You could switch banks all you want, but if you're reusing the same check number, it's going to be a problem. So they must be unique, except when you do a debit payment, which we will do when we get to the utilities. What you can put in the check number is for debit card payments or credit card payments. You could put in the words debit space transaction. That's one way. There's other ways that conferences use that to denote a debit card or a credit card payment. They might use the transaction number that's actually given to you when you make the debit and credit card payment. That's fairly long. Some of them have special coding, but whatever it is, it must be unique. That's the point. Other than debit transaction, you can have multiple of those. So we're going to put in a check number, and I'm just going to pick one. I'm just going to enter one in. Hopefully I didn't use that before. So what's happening now is that I have my checkbook open, and I'm going to use check number 3587. Let's make this kind of like a 4-digit. And now, am I going to mail this check, or am I going to deliver it? So let's say we're going to mail it. We put it in the mail date. Today's date. Okay. And really, that's all that's required to approve a check. So I come up here and I could approve it. Like I said, I could have denied this check totally, and it would have just wiped it out. And the caseworker would have had, the caseworker would actually, the transaction would say deny on it. We don't delete it. We just tag it with a status called deny, like we do when we void out a check, which we will get into. So that's all that's required in this case. Everything else looks good. The vendor looks good. The assistance category. My advice to you is just don't go here. After a while, we all get into a rhythm of doing things, and all we do is this, this, this. Please check all this information out, because it could be inaccurate or not exactly what you want to see, and you want to make sure you communicate that back to the caseworker. So we're going to approve this check, and once I approve this check, what's going to happen is an email is going to go to the caseworker, notifying the caseworker that you have taken some action. It doesn't say that you've approved it, doesn't say that you denied it, doesn't say you changed the amount. It says that you have taken some action on that request that they submitted. What they would do at that time is go into CMS, go into that case, and it would have a status next to that transaction as paid. Now, let's just say that's the only transaction for that case. That is the caseworker's signal to close the case. A case cannot be closed unless everything, the treasurer has approved or denied all the transactions. That's when a case can be closed. So please encourage your caseworkers to close the case after you approve the check, because if they don't, it's going to affect your annual report, if anything else, because the annual report only thinks of and only accumulates closed cases. So the caseworkers should get into the habit, into the discipline of closing cases once you have paid the check. And they get notified. They get the email, and they also get the message in their message box or the message board. So they're aware that you have taken some action. So I'm going to approve this. And all I have to do is click approve. And that's check number was already used. I put that in randomly. Can you believe that? Okay, so we're going to try again. Just making this up. You can't make that up. Okay, so that check, you see this check has been closed as paid right there. Okay, so if we go back to our check request folder, we will only see 2 now left. So this is the list that you keep working, okay? Because I don't know your activity. You might only get 1 of these a week. You may get 10 a day. It doesn't really matter. But you just keep working your list so you're taking action on everything that's in your unprocessed work list to approve or whatever. So the next one we're going to do, I'm not going to really work on this one right now because that's a little different. I'm going to work now on the utilities. This takes on totally different characteristics. So more than likely, and you probably need to look at this every time, regardless of whether it's rent or if it's utilities. Besides the standard stuff up here, I want to draw your eye down here to this place. So the account number. Account number is absolutely important, especially with utilities or if you're paying a mortgage, doesn't matter. But with utilities, I can tell you firsthand, if you don't have an account number, it's not going to get posted to the right, in their vernacular, customer. And it's got to be accurate because that's the way that they typically post is by account number. Now, where you get that from is from the case worker. And what you're going to do more than likely is when you are physically writing that check, you're going to put the account number on that check along with the client's name, obviously. And then when that check gets submitted to the utility company, that's how they're going to post it. Now, the other important piece of information is the account holder. The account holder could be different than the client. And I will tell you from experience, and I think all the experienced treasurers will tell you this, you will see that quite a bit. And the reason is because the client probably couldn't get any credit and somebody had a cosign for them. But this is how the utility company knows your client. They don't know Brittany Kelly. They know Jake Rogers at a service address. That's what they know. So by you telling them it's Brittany Kelly, that's not going to help them. So Jake Rogers, the account holder information is extremely important. Once again, you get that from the caseworker. They bring it over. I told you about this field right here, right? The electronic payments debit card. That's something I entered in as the caseworker. I'm basically telling my treasurer, because this is a utility, and again, it's the way Holy Family works. Not all of you do the same thing. We pay all of our utilities online using our debit card, and they charge us a fee. And by the way, we'll talk about that later on when we change the amount of a check request. So I'm signaled to the treasurer, pay this, but pay it electronically using our debit card. Don't pay it with a paper check for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot faster. Two, the client might be getting disconnected tomorrow and we can't wait for the mail to arrive. So he's going to pay it using a debit card, okay? Because I asked him to do it. You don't have to. I mean, the treasurer would know themselves of what they pay using debit cards and credit cards or physical checks or electronic bill payment. That's totally a treasurer's choice. I did it because I'm the caseworker and I happen to know what we do at Holy Family. So once again, you put in a check number. Now, because this is I asked him to use a debit card, and let's say that treasurer is going to use debit card to pay this. He or she can put in the words debit transaction. And that'd be good enough. That's all they need to do. They can put in multiple of those. So let's say during the month you had 10 of those and you entered in debit transaction, debit transaction, debit transaction 10 times. Now you get your statement. On your statement, you will have a section, I believe, that will say debit transactions. And these will be listed there. But you're not going to be able to actually, I mean, you can tie it back because of the amount. But that's about it, because usually what they put on the statement, if I'm not mistaken, and Roger and Charles and the other guys that deal with this all the time, is usually the transaction number or the confirmation number, which is a very, very long number. So what I've seen other treasurers do, rather than using debit transaction, which CMS will allow, is they develop their own system. They might use debit card dash today's date dash 1, and then next one would be, if they had it for the same date, 10/23/21 dash 2. As long as it's unique, it's fine. But the only time you are allowed duplicates is when you put in the words debit transaction. Okay? So we're going to do that. And I'm going to put in the debit transaction. Now, unfortunately, we don't have another category called electronic. We probably should. So you only get to pick between delivered and mailed. Your choice. Doesn't really matter. It's not relevant anyway if you're paying electronically. I guess I would pick delivered. You put in the date and delivered to, I would say, website. I mean, nothing else you can do at that time. It's really not all that relevant. Like I said, I really think we need another item in that drop down called electronic. And everything else is basically the same as before. Here you can see Brittany Kelly's information. You go to the vendor information, you verify all of this information, and then you approve it. Okay? And it's been approved as well. So I am going to stop there. What I decided to do was, at different points in the demo, is to open the mics up for questions before I move on to the next section. So that was all about approving checks and using debit and credit card payments. So if you have any questions, you can open up your mics.
John, I have a suggestion. I know you use Marietta Power there. For Georgia Power with this, on many of the statements, of course, it has the client name, it has the client account as such, but it has a web access number. And it's a unique number for that. I would suggest that that web access number be put in, maybe you dash it over or something, up there where it has account number as well, because that is a trace back, just in case.
Yeah, Charles, a good point. And that is true. We got burned many times when we have Georgia Power and they want this web access number, which is physically on the bill. I think it's in the top right-hand corner and it's hard to see. It isn't something that your eye is drawn to it. So here's a suggestion. That's really your choice. You can instruct your caseworkers who have the physical bill because they had to have it to pay it, that they put it as part of the account number. That's one.
Definitely.
Two is that they can put it in the other field, as I said, and just log it there. And then you'll have it when it comes over to you. Yeah, I don't think we need to change anything. I think it's just a process change that you would need to make within your conference and instructing your caseworkers to do that, whatever field is more appropriate for you.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, this is Joanne.
Yes, Joanne.
And I'm from St. Philip Benizi in Jonesboro. We're a small conference. So I do intake, casework, treasurer, and I'm not clear on how to get back to the casework screen on this client after I have paid the check or done the online transaction. How do I get back to close the case?
Okay. So this is outside of, I'm going to have to log off. This is outside of treasury training, but here's what you would do, Joanne. You would go to My Assigned Cases, okay? When you go to your login and you got My Assigned Cases, you click on that case. When you open up that case and you're on the Assistance tab, you will see that transaction marked as paid, and then you would move it through the cycle to close the case. Like I said, that's more casework centric and is not treasury, but that's how you would do it.
Okay, so since I'm doing it all, do I just go to the home page?
Yes, go to your home page, go to My Assigned Case. I can't do it under Larry Bogan's login because he's not a caseworker.
Okay.
But you go to My Assigned Cases, it pulls up all your cases. You would then click on that case. You would then go, it'll take you to wherever you left off in the workflow, which is typically around the Assistance tab, or around the check and pledge tab. And if that's the only thing, the only transaction and it's been paid, you could move right through the workflow all the way to the complete tab and close the case.
Okay.
But please close the case.
Right.
That's important. And you should, all caseworkers should get in the habit of doing it once the treasurer has taken action.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
You bet. Any other questions before I move into the next section? No? Okay, great. Now we're going to jump into the heart of the system, which is the check register. Okay? So this is where everything lands. All those payments, the 2 payments that we made, they're in the check register. But you're going to be surprised what check register they're in, but they're in the check register. So like I said, these are your 2 options that you will use quite a bit as a treasurer. So this is what the check register looks like when you open it up. So once again, before we get into the mechanics, I want to do a tour of it. So the current month that I have open is October 2020, not 21. And unfortunately, this is a test system and I can't do anything about the data. It's kind of garbage data, but it works for demo purposes. So that's one tab. The other tab you have here is other months. So other months that are open, you see all these other months from October 2020 all the way through September, November 2020, August 2021, September 21, October 21. So those are other months. Like if I click there, guess what? That's where your 2 transactions went. We'll talk about this later on. CMS puts the current date on your paid transactions. So those 2 transactions went to the October 2021 register, not the 2020. I'm going to show you how we're going to backdate that as well and get them into the October 2020 register. Okay. So I went backwards. So here's the current month. Now let's just talk about your balances here. Okay. You got 3 columns. You got your bank statement balance. And in this case, because we haven't closed this month, our beginning and our ending balance are the same. It won't be when we start clearing transactions, when we clear credits and we clear debits, and you get an ending balance here that you would need to balance back to your physical bank statement. And if it doesn't balance, don't go any further because there's something wrong. Either you didn't clear a transaction, or you cleared too many transactions, or there's something else going on. But that is one of the very first things that you do when you're closing the month, is to make sure that your ending balance here is equal to your ending balance on your bank statement. So that's one column. This other column is your check register column. So if you take your ending balance plus your outstanding deposits minus your outstanding checks, this is what you really have in your checkbook right now. Because obviously the bank doesn't know about any outstanding checks, right? Yeah. Well, they might know about some of those outstanding checks because they could have cleared. So anyway, this is the amount of money you got on hand. Now, if you're into pledges, and I don't think most of you are, but as another view we give you is how many pledges, the amount of pledges you have outstanding. So if you take your registered balance minus your pledges, this is really what you got out on hand right now. Because some of those pledges are going to happen. More than likely, about 98% of those pledges are going to happen. Not on the same day, but they're going to happen. So in reality, from a cash standpoint, you really got 32,000. And I'm not going to talk about that because I did a whole video and a whole training session on pledges. You go back and review that if you like. But those are the 3 columns. But if you're not using pledges, these are the 2 columns that you need to be focused on. Okay. Now let's look at the check register itself. So these are all of your transactions that you have paid, or if you've taken some action, or you've even entered into the system. You got your check number, of course, your date, whether it's a debit or a credit column, who you paid it to, the client, and the case number. Now, some of the techniques that you should be aware of. You can sort these. So if I want to sort these by type, I just click on the column and I get all of my adjustments, all my housing, scroll down, utilities, void checks. I can do that same with the number. I can sort this page by number, by date, doesn't matter. So that's one technique. Here's one that most treasurers don't know. This might be one new thing that Roger Dar and Kay and Charles is going to learn. Well, down here you have an item called filter. If I wanted to see check number 4115, to bring it right up to the top. If I wanted to see housing I would see just my housing. Okay? So it's a way to filter things out. If I wanted to see Arbors at East Cobb, I got 2 transactions there. So that's pretty neat. Most treasurers don't even know that that exists. But if you're, rather than scrolling through this thing and sorting it by type, looking for a certain check number, all you got to do is put it in there and the system will find it for you. You can put in the case number if you know the case number. Any one of these items will do. Okay? So that brings us up here to this set of buttons that we have. So I'm going to talk about the most important button, the recalculate button. This is necessary, and I can't tell you when, but it happens. And I'm sure some of the treasurers can tell you this as well. That's the experienced ones. You might have entered in a transaction into the register, but your balance did not get adjusted. That register balance did not change at all, whether it was a debit or a credit. What you need to do is hit recalculate, and it will then get adjusted to the right total. You should also get in the habit of always hitting recalculate before you start a month-end close. Because like I said, there's certain situations where it's not a real-time calculator, that you have to do a recalculate to tell the system to calculate everything that's in that register. Okay, that is probably your most important button that you will use. If you ever think you're out of balance or the balance doesn't look exactly right, the very first thing you should do is press recalculate. Okay, so then we have a list of other options that you can do here, and we're going to go through these, by the way. The very first thing, now that I've given you the tour of the register, is we're going to start working with these, and we'll get into the financial reports up there and the check requests. That just brings you back to the queue, you know, your work list where you had a list of the checks that you needed to work on, and this takes you, I'll show you later on. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some transactions now working out of the register. Okay, we already saw that if the caseworker submits a check request, it gets put into the register automatically. But there are times when you need to enter something directly into the register that is not client related expenses. And I emphasize that when you use an add debit, this is for non-client related expenses. And I'll use an example. Okay, everybody's familiar with this one, your solidarity contribution that you make each and every month. That is not client specific at all, but you have to write a check to the consul office for your solidarity payment. You would click solidarity contribution. By the way, here's others. Before we even do that, let's just talk about some others. Food and groceries is another good one. There are times when you as a treasurer need to go buy gift cards. I don't think gift cards, no. Okay, food and groceries. Okay, and you got to buy gift cards or vouchers. And you go to Kroger, you go to Publix, wherever you go, and you write a check for $500. Here's how you would do it the same way. You would enter it into your checkbook because CMS needs to know about that check that you wrote. Once again, that is not a client-related expense. Let's talk about reimbursements. That's a good one. So if you had a member that needed to be reimbursed for an expense that they occurred, what they would do is first fill out a hard copy reimbursement form, which each conference should have. And we need that for auditing purposes. You as the treasurer would come in and add a debit for that expense, assuming that expense was not client related. In other words, they went out and bought supplies. They bought some food for the pantry, whatever they did. But if your caseworker used their debit card as an example to pay for a client's motel stay, what they need to do is go back into the case, submit a check request like they normally would do, make them the vendor who you're going to pay. And that way that expense goes onto the client's record. Even though we're reimbursing the member, we need to make sure that the client record is updated, that we show that we pay $350 for a 1 week stay there. So once again, my point is on this add debits is really for non-client related expenses. Okay? So we'll cancel out of that. That's fine. Everybody got that, hopefully. We're going to have a break when we go to after the credits, and I'll stop there and then take some questions. Okay, credits, adding a credit to your register. Well, this is all your receipts, right? This is at the end of the month when you have your collection, you would enter in, the collection amount that you have here. Another good one is probably, let's see now. I think I have it in here. Yeah, from other SVDPs. Most of you are familiar with twinning. Twinning is when we're working with a client and we don't have enough money, or we want another conference to help us with paying this client's mortgage. Let's say it's $2,000. Okay? And so you own the client. You're working with the client, and you pay the $2,000 to the mortgage company, and the other conference that you're working with then sends you a check for $1,000. You're going to split it 50-50. This is how you would record it. It's funds receipts from other SVDPs. That is very, very common. I think some of you work with grants. That's another one. Thrift store receipts is another one that's very common. I believe the way this works is that the thrift store, quote, makes a contribution to the conference for a certain amount, and that's how you would record that. But these are all credits. These are not debits. This is money received, okay?
One comment, John,
Yes, sir.
on grants.
Yes.
Back to the grants field. It's important that you distinguish between a government grant and a non-government grant.
You mean the qualified government grant and
Yes.
the restricted one?
Yeah, I get a lot of mistakes right there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another one that's hidden, and unfortunately you didn't receive. I'll show you later on. Special events and others. That's a pretty hidden category, and probably the most typical, believe it or not, when you look at the handout that I'll show you later on that you will receive. Everybody deals with memorials, as an example. Somebody might have died within your parish and they've asked to make contributions, St. Vincent de Paul. This is where you would tuck that receipt. All memorials go into special events, believe it or not. And again, you will see the description with all of these in the handout that I will share with you that you will receive, okay? So that's probably another hidden one that you deal with occasionally, but we all unfortunately deal with memorials, gifts that are given to us because of somebody's passing. Okay?
Okay, and
So-
John, is Solidarity paid on that amount?
Solidarity paid on what amount? Memorials?
On Memorials.
Yes, it is. It's above
Okay.
the line. We'll get into solidarity in a minute. If it's above line 3C, I believe it is, that is one of the ones. Yep. So that's just to show you, this is one of the handouts that you would have received is a solidarity calculation. And that will be included as far as it is subject to solidarity. We'll get into that later on when we get into the financial report.
I have another question about grants. Is it true that all grants have to go through St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia? That the individual conference cannot apply for a grant on its own?
That's outside of my knowledge base, but I believe I've worked with conferences that have their own, get their own grants directly. I mean, so that's a question really for Cheryl. Cheryl King, who's the CFO. But my basic understanding is that conferences can get grants, but I might be wrong on that. My knowledge might be old.
Yeah, John, conferences can do their own grants, but they need to notify St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia. And the reason for that is that some organizations that give grants will only give the grant once a year.
Yeah.
And if a conference gets a grant for $2,000, the council could miss out on a $10,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 grant because of that. So if you do your own, just notify the grant person at the council level to make sure you're not duplicating effort.
Yeah, good point. Like I said, I believe you can do grants. It's just a notification, so there's no duplication, which makes sense. Okay, before I get into the next section, I wanted to stop there, review the check register, the add debits, add credits, recalculate button is what we've done so far. So any questions? I mean, you are adding into your check register every time you do an add debit, add credit, you're adding something into this register, okay? And again, my advice is that should only be used for non-client related expenses. And I've seen it misused. I have seen where treasurers reimburse caseworkers for an expense that caseworker paid for a client related expense. And that's wrong. That's just wrong. Because a lot of things, yeah, your checkbook would be in balance, no doubt about it. You know, whether it's $350 or $500, doesn't really matter. Your checkbook's going to be in balance. But what you're going to miss is that isn't going to get posted to the client's record. So if that client comes in a month later, when somebody does a search on that client, looks at their past assistance, it will show as if we never helped them. And therefore they will get assistance. So that is a fatal flaw as far as I'm concerned that you need to absolutely stay away from, is only use this for non-client related expenses. Okay. So now we're going to get into some of the real fun stuff. We're going to backdate a check. Okay. So I think I told you that the two checks that we paid went into the October 2021 register because that's today's month is the 23rd. That's what they got stamped with, the 23rd, 2021. But let's use a hypothetical example. Let's say we're nearing the end of the month and you haven't closed yet. So you got October open, you got November open, and a check comes in, but it was really an October event, but it landed in your November register and you want to backdate it into October. That's a very typical scenario, especially when you're in the first or second day of the new month, because when the month changes from October to November, you're going to have two registers open. You're going to have the current month, which is going to be November, and then of course you're going to have October, which you haven't closed yet because you're still waiting for your statement to come through or whatever. So that's a more realistic example of where you will find checks kind of creep into a different month that you might want to backdate, which brings up a very important topic. You can backdate anything you want to only open months, not close months. So in this case, I have lots of open months. I can backdate this too. From October 2020 all the way through October 2021, because all those registers are basically open, because I haven't closed October 2020 yet. Okay, so you can backdate into an open month, but you cannot backdate into a closed month. You can't do anything once that month is closed, really. And although people think that we can reopen the register, we can't. So if you're out of balance and it's a couple cents, whatever, my advice to you is talk to your district treasurer and maybe make an adjustment and just deal with it. You know, have an audit trail or send Cheryl King an email saying I was out of balance by 21 cents and the month is already closed. I made an adjustment and move on. Because we're not going to be able to go back and reopen the register for you to get that 21 cents corrected. So it's a very important point about open months. Open months is free game. You could do anything you want to do, but closed months, that's off limits. You really can't do much. So we're going to backdate this check right here, the $500. And we're going to backdate it to, now watch as I go back in the calendar here. This is as far back as I can go. Any one of those dates is acceptable. But look, when I get to October 2020, I can't go back any further because those months are closed. So I could backdate this $500 check to today's date. Today's date, but into the 2020 register if I want, and then just click update. So now we will go back into check register. We'll go into 2020. And there's our $500 check right there. So we backdated it into the 2020, October 2020 register. Okay? So that's backdating. Let's talk about changing check amounts. Okay? So let's click on that. Yeah, that will do. So changing check amounts. Once again, you can do that as long as it's in the current month. You cannot change a check amount in a closed month. That's done. But I certainly can do it if it's within the current month. So let's use an example of why would you want to change a check amount. Here's a good example, and it might not be applicable to all of you. We pay, as I said before, we pay our utilities online using the utilities company's website. So if we're paying Marietta Power for $500, we're going to get charged a fee for doing that. $2.75, $1.75, they're all different. But we don't want to really burden the caseworker with trying to keep up with is Marietta Power $1.75 and Georgia Power is $3.75 and Cobb EMC is something else. That's irrelevant to them. What they need to do is submit the check that we want, the amount we want to pay for that client. So they submitted the check for $500, but Marietta Power charged us $3.75 for that electronic payment. Well, when you get your statement, it's going to say $503.75. So 500 is not going to do. So you can change it to $503.75, right there, because that's going to be equal to what you're going to see on your on your statement, right? So that's an example of when you want to change the check amount. Another good example could be a mistake that you made. God forbid, we all make them. That although the caseworker put in 500, you approved 500. That it really was supposed to be for 503.75, and you can change it, if that's the case, if you made a mistake, which kind of leads me into changing check numbers. That's another good example. And probably a typical scenario would be, changing check number right there. So a typical scenario might be that you approved the check for 500. As you're writing the check out, for whatever the reasons, you wrote it for $532. And then you realized, well, that's not right. So you rip up the check or void it out or whatever. It's a paper check. You just rip it up. And you're going to write a new check. So you write a new check and you put in a new check number. One more. Hopefully we didn't use that one. We didn't. Then we go back to the check register. And if we bring this guy to the top, there's our new check number. So you could change check numbers. You could change amounts of checks. You could backdate checks. You can do all of that. The other one I want to show you is the void, of how you void a transaction and why you would void a transaction. Okay, so a typical scenario would be a replacement check. This happens to us quite a bit because we're in this pandemic world where we don't deliver checks to our leasing office. We send them to through the mail. And of course, it might take 3 to 5 business days for it to get there. And then we get a panic call from the client who says the leasing office did not receive your check. And we let it sit for a while. And eventually we say, okay, fine, we'll void it out and we'll reissue another one. And we might find somebody to actually go hand carry that check. So that's a replacement check. Now you could void checks that were carried over. If you see here, let me go by date again. You see there's a lot of carryovers here between December 5th, 2019 and October 2020. So you could void out a check that's been an outstanding check for a while, and we'll talk about that in a while, but you might want to void it and then you replace it. So we'll void it. You have to give a void reason. Issued vendor lost check. Check was reissued, or should I say check number, I probably write check number was issued as a replacement check, if I can type. Okay, this is required for lots of reasons. One, it's a required field. Anything with an asterisk is required. So you're not going to go very far unless you put something in there. But more importantly, what you put in there, the content is very important, because the auditors look at this, especially when it comes to void checks. They want to know why you voided that check. And this is the audit trail right there. So please just don't put in some, easy stuff just to get by the edit. Put in some meaningful text so that in case you ever have to go back, or the district treasurer needs to go back, or the auditors need to go back, you have an audit trail of why you voided that check. So if we sort it by voids now or sort it by there, we'll find out that we just voided. Which one did we do? Which one did we just do? I guess we'll, if we want to undo the void, we can undo the void as well. So in case you made a mistake, obviously when you void a check out, it puts money back into your checking account. Okay. When I just undid the void, it took money out. What did I say? Always hit recalculate. You never know. It's sort of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So my advice to you, when you do things like that, you always hit recalculate. And it'll give you the right total. Now here's a situation. It doesn't happen much, but it does happen. It's happened to us a few times. Let's say that you had an outstanding check for months, and I mean months, 3 months, 4 months. You said, listen, that check must be lost or something, so I'm just going to go ahead and void it out. And you void out the check. And you close that month. The next month, sure enough, that check appears on your bank statement. So what do? What you do, because right now, if I went to that client's record, I would see that transaction and it would have a status next to that check as void, as if we never paid anything. But we did, because it cleared the bank, right? So what you need to do is have your caseworker submit another check request. And when you get that check request, in the check number field, let's say that the original check was check number 1000. I'm just going to make it up. What I would do is put check number 1000 dash, in my case, lowercase a. And I would use that as my check number. Why? Because on my bank statement, the bank knows it as just check number 1000. I want some way to tie my register, CMS register, with the bank statement. And that's the way to tie it together. Like I said, that situation doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And you need to know how to handle it. And the way you handle it is you got to go back through the casework process, resubmit the check, treasurer approves the check, but puts in a check number that tied back to the bank statement. Okay, so I am going to stop there before we move on to the next section. Questions?
I have a question. In the scenario you just gave, isn't the case closed? How does the caseworker then go back in to
Very good
make another
question.
check request?
Yeah, you reopen the case. Caseworker goes back in, they can go over to search cases. You know, if they're not going to know the case number, but they'll put in the client's name, a bunch of cases come up, they would click on it, and they'll see a reopen button, and they would reopen it, tab all the way back to the assistance tab, and enter in a new check request. Good question, but that's what they would do. It could have been, obviously, if the check was outstanding for months and months, the case is obviously is closed, and what you have to do is reopen it again.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that section? We're going to move into month end now and preparing for month end. Everybody good so far, right? Right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is clear checks, and you can unclear them too as you go through. Here's my advice. I hope most of you have access to your statement electronically on a daily basis. You may or may not. Obviously, if you don't, you need to wait for it to come through the mail, and that's usually, 3 to 5 business days after the month. But if you have access to your bank statement online, my advice to you is clear the checks as they are being cleared. Do not wait to the end of the month. And the reason is because you want to speed up the closing process and get your reports to the consul office as soon as possible. And the way to do that is clear as you go. Do not wait to the end of the month, because then your head's bobbing back and forth between your statement and CMS, and you could make a mistake, you could check the wrong line, and then you'll be out of balance. It'll take you time before you figure out that you cleared a transaction you shouldn't have cleared, you didn't clear one that you should have. The best thing to do is clear as you go, and the way you do that is look at your bank statement on a daily, maybe a weekly, maybe twice a week, whatever, but don't wait to the end of the month. That's my plea to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we are at the end of the month, and what we want to do now is start clearing our transactions. So what I have in front of me, I'm pretending, is my bank statement. That's what I have. And I have my register, CMS register here. So I'm going to start clearing checks based upon what's on the bank statement. Okay? So we're going to clear this guy. We're going to go over to reconcile. And we're going to start clearing checks. We'll clear this one. We'll clear this one. I don't know. I'm just randomly picking some. We'll clear that one. We'll clear that one. Do we have any credits? Yeah, we got credits. We'll clear that credit. We'll clear that credit. Let's say that's it. And say clear selected transactions. Okay, so focus on this column right here. So what the system's saying is your beginning balance was 46,510.07. The amount of deposits you cleared, your credits, were 7,122. The amount of withdrawals, 1,200. Your ending balance is 524207. That is an important number. What you want to do at this point is look at your ending balance on your statement. If they don't agree, stop. Go figure out why they don't agree. Once again, clear too many, didn't clear something, or there's something else going on that you really need to dig into. But there is no sense going on to the close process unless those amounts agree. Okay? So that's step one. Clear all your transactions, whether you do it at the end of the month or preferably you do it during the month. Okay, now we're ready to close. Okay, we've checked off everything. We think we're in balance. We're ready to go, right? So I'm going to click this button right here, close October 2020, not 2021. What it's telling me is it's going to lock the register. And in a lot of cases at conferences, we have multiple treasurers. So we don't want one treasurer closing while another treasurer is entering something into the register. So this register is going to be locked. It's going to lock anybody who has a treasurer's role to get into, to add or change any information, or else it becomes a moving target. Okay, so nothing in, nothing out. It's like putting your iPhone on airplane mode. So I said, okay, fine, let's start. Okay, and what it's telling me at this point is, do you want to clear any more transactions? We know what you cleared so far. Your bank ending statement is 45,830.07. And I'm going to, and I think that's not right, but let's do something. Let's say that I decided, you know, I'm going to stop here. I'll pick this up some other time. So let's just go back. You see this resume button? let's say that you walked away and you were starting your closing process. You got distracted, you went off and did something else, but you wanted to come back, but you want to come back to the point of where you left off. You could just click resume. Or let's say, you know, this thing is so messed up, I want to start over again. You click cancel. But I will tell you, it'll cancel everything, but it will not cancel, it will not undo, clear, it would not unclear, I guess, all your clear transactions. You would have to manually go through and do that. So if I want to pick up where I left off, that's where I left off. And so I would just say next. And look, I did this purposely to show you that I am out of balance. The system calculated that my balance based upon the beginning balance plus my credits minus my debits, my bank ending balance is this amount. Right now, I entered in, I guess I did not do that. Let me see, let me go back. Oops. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. When I was here, what it was asking me up there was to enter in what I am seeing as my bank statement ending balance. I'm sorry, I blew over that. That's the most important thing, because this is how the system is going to figure out whether what you have on your bank statement is equal to what CMS has. So what it's asking me for, that's a data entry field. Enter in what you are seeing as your bank statement ending balance, and then move on. Now, I purposely am not going to change that to the correct amount to show you that other screen that says you're out of balance, you need to stop. The system will not let you go on if you're out of balance. So it's going to compare what I entered in here to what it calculated. And it's basically saying you're out of balance. You can't, I mean, you go on, but you're not going to be able to close. Okay? So what I would do is I would go back to my register. And in this case, I'm just going to cut and paste here, copy and paste, because I can't remember that number. And then I'm going to resume. I'm going to go previous. I'm going to enter in that amount. So let's say that now that is the amount that I'm seeing in my statement right there, which is basically what the system calculated as well. So I went back and figured out why I was out of balance and determined that now this is the new number. This is what it should be. Okay. So then I would click next. And it's telling me that I am in balance. The printed reports, I can then see my check register, which is a PDF, if I wanted to. And by the way, look at that amount right there, the 37,712.89. That should be exactly what your check register amount says. And then of course you can review your checks. It's just, that's the 37,712.89. Here's all your outstanding checks. And again, look up here, make sure they're in balance, 37,712.89. That's your visual check. And here's all your outstanding checks. Okay, so those are your check register and your outstanding checks. And as you move through the wizard, that's what we call this. And it'll take some time. There you go. So the system is saying you are in balance. Here's your check register balance. And here's what your monthly financial report balance says. You are in balance. You are ready to close. If you don't see this, you need to go back and figure out why. First of all, the system would stop you, would not allow you to close if you're out of balance. So here's your check register PDF, you're outstanding again. You can view your monthly report, which we will see in a minute. But once you close, it will publish all those reports. And I'll show you where to go there, because those are the reports that you send to the consul office, the published reports. And I assume you send them electronically. They're just PDFs. You attach them to an email and you send them up the chain. I think it goes to a district treasurer, to president, to the consul office. Roger, is that the correct route?
Yeah, you can, they need to go to the district treasurer. Some people copy the council office at the same time, some people don't. The district treasurer is supposed to review it for accuracy before sending it on to the council office. That's the way.
Okay, so then it must go to the conference president first, to the district treasurer, or district treasurer, and then consul. When does the consul president look at it?
We send it to our conference treasurer, and he review it, and then he send it to the district treasurer or president, and then they review again, and then finally they send it to the council office.
The district treasurer.
Yeah.
What, John, the official process is that the treasurer sends it to the president. The president sends it on to the district treasurer with a comment that they approve it.
Yeah,
That's the official way.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Doesn't
That's what
always
I
work
thought.
that, yes, doesn't always work that way, but that's.
I know, but that is the process, right?
That's
I
the
mean,
process.
that's the official process, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So we're going to not close right now. So I'm going to go back. I missed the opportunity showing you the thing, darn it. I wanted to show you a preview financial report. I'm not going to be able to do that more than likely. Okay, so here's your monthly report. Oh, I could. Can I do this? Yeah. Okay, so this is the most important report that you have in the system, I think, as a treasurer. This is your monthly financial report, and you need to make sure everything is in balance. This lists all the receipts and total receipts, and we'll get into solidarity. I guess I missed the opportunity before to show you the preview, but I will anyway. This is all your expenses. Okay. These are statistics. I don't know. Some treasurers are really into this. Some treasurers could care less about it, the statistical part of it. Membership. But this is important. See this 953.75? This is a total of 6A through 6M. So if you go up here, the 973.75. Okay, so that's what it really breaks it out, and we use this quite a bit. The reason why we use it, especially when we do a preview, is we set a cap on temporary lodging. So anytime during the month we want to know where we are, because we'll shut it off at $1,500. But this is at the end of the month, and again, this is the monthly report. And you can get this anytime during the month, and I'll show that to you. It's called Preview Financial Report, which I probably should have showed you that first, but I didn't. Because the Preview Financial Report will show you what the solidarity, the recommended solidarity is, so you can write the check. The final report does not, because the solidarity is printed up here, right underneath where it says Treasury Report. But that's only when you do a preview. It's not when you do a final report. Okay, so we're ready to close. And all I would have to do is press close, and it would close the month. Well, I'm not going to do that because I want to keep this for some other training. But that's all that does. That just moves you along, closes the month, And what happens, I'm going to cancel this, by the way. Cancel the whole process, and then I can show you the preview too, by the way. What happens, then it rolls the months. Then November becomes your current month, okay? And October becomes published reports. And so let's say that I closed October 2020, and I need to send them my reports on to the president, who then sends it to the district treasurer, who then sends it to the council office. You would click financial reports. You would go to, let's say the close month in this case is September, because I didn't close October, I canceled out of it. And here are all the reports. And you could just then download these. You could print them, you could download them into your computer, PDFs, and then attach them and send them off. So you got the check register, you got the outstanding, that's how you get to them. So these are published, okay? Which means also, I'm going to kind of break out of here for a minute, go to documents. See where it says conference reports? Your entire conference can see the reports if they wanted to at any time. Just by going up to documents, which I did, and then click conference reports. And these are all published. These are the ones that went to the consul office. Okay, so let me go back to check register, because I am now going to be able to show you the preview, because I didn't close the month. But that's all that button would have done, would have closed the month. It would advance the months, where November now would become the current month. It would take all of the carry forwards, move them into the new month, all the outstanding checks. Your balances would all be cleared, that sort of thing. So I want to show you preview financial report. You can do this anytime during the month. But the item I want to show you was the solidarity calculation, because this is how you know how much you need to write the check for. Okay? And if you go to, I'll go to that in a minute, that anything $50,000 or less, I think it's here, if I toes, yeah. If it's greater than 50, you're going to pay 10%. If it's less than 50, you're going to pay 7.5%. So and that's based upon prior year's receipts. So in this case, it was 96,254. So this conference, my conference, is going to pay 10% and not 7.5%. If you were under 50, you're going to pay 7.5%. So that's this solidarity calculation right there. These are the lines that are subject to solidarity. Anything below that line is excluded from solidarity. And then the calculation is made based upon the prior year and its fiscal year receipts. Anything at $50,000 or more, the conference pays 10%. Less than 50, you pay 7.5%. By the way, this is the other handout you will get. These are all the transactions that we talked about, all your receipts. And here's the description and what line number they appear on. So if you ever get stuck and you want to know what's in that bucket or what's included or excluded from that line, you have it right in front of you just by looking at this document right here. Okay? So those are two handouts that you will get, I think, after the training. Amanda will be sending them out, plus they'll be out on the internet. So that's looking at the preview financial report. And again, I probably should have showed you that before I did the close. But you know what? We got a little time. Let me just go ahead and close this and just move through it real fast so you can see the rolling. Okay, here's where we left off. I'm going to press close because I'm in balance. Okay, so as I said, your current month now is November. Your beginning and ending balance is the same. You always have access to other months, other open months. And all the carry forwards went over to the new month, to November. I always would hit recalculate. I never trust it, especially when it does a big calculation. Never know, what transaction it did or did not calculate. So the way to be certain is to hit the recalculate button. So here's where we are. That's exactly what your monthly report register balance was. So you're in balance, you're ready to start the new month. Okay, what else did I have? Oh, and then if we go to the financial reports, like I said, now we see October 2020. And there's our published reports that we could send off up the chain to the president, district treasurer, consul office. You can print them, create PDFs, whatever you like to do. Okay, I think that's about all I had to cover. And I was going to stop at this section anyway to see if you had any questions, especially about the close. Very, very important. That is job one at the end of the month for you to do.
John,
Question?
I have a comment to just re-emphasize what you emphasized greatly going through, particularly for new treasurers that haven't taken your training, is the biggest mistake they make during closing is where it says where you manually enter your bank statement. They're entering the number off of the check register where it says bank statement.
Okay.
And once they do that, it forces them in balance, even though they're not sometimes. And as a district treasurer, I've seen that happen quite a few times, unfortunately. And once you close, the only way you can fix that is to adjust it the following month. So
That's right.
I just wanted to reemphasize that and you did quite well, but you got to get that number off of your physical bank statement, not the check register.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen that too, Raj. And, there's no way to protect against that. I mean, the one entry field we ask for in the close is that number. It's the only way we know that what you are seeing is the same as what the system calculated. It's the only way that we know it. So you need to make sure you pull that number. And like I said, the other important point about the close is don't wait to the end of the month. I don't know what you do in yours or Charles, what you do in your conferences, but our treasurer is online every day clearing transactions as they are clearing the bank.
Yeah, I do mine twice. I do mine 2-3 times during the month.
There you go. It doesn't really matter, whether it's every day, if it's 2-3 times a month. What you don't want to do is wait to the end of the month. Then it becomes, and especially I've seen some conferences like Transfiguration, probably, Kay. I don't know how many transactions you have during the month. How many checks do you normally write in a month? Okay.
Yeah, I probably write 100 or so.
You write 100. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
We don't write as much as Roger's conference, but we have quite a bit. I cannot think exactly how many checks we write. But anyway, I have a question, John. You said earlier about that filter at the bottom. Okay,
I'm sorry,
I want to know how much we paid for the temporary lodging. So I will put their temporary lodging at the bottom, at the filter section.
Yep. In this case, we don't.
Is there a way that can figure out the dollar amount automatically?
Oh, no. It's just a search field to get you, based upon the criteria you put in the filter.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you put in a date of, I don't know, 04-01, then you're going to get everybody with 0401, but you still have to add up and say $600.
Yeah, okay. All
Yeah.
right, so I have,
This only gets you to that spot in the register quickly without you kind of sorting it and going through and then kind of doing this with your eyes. You know, it kind of gives you the short list. It's a pretty
Okay.
neat feature.
yeah, I like that. So, but I still have to add it to the
Oh,
manual
yeah.
thing.
Yep.
Okay,
No
thank
getting
you.
around that. No getting around that one.
Okay.
Anything else on the close or anything else that we covered or didn't cover that you might have questions about, especially new treasurers coming into this? I hope you got the flow of all of this, starting with the check request. I mean, that's where it all begins for you, unless
I
you're
do
a
have one
caseworker.
question. It sounds like the last thing you do before you close really is when you hit the preview financial report, you get the dollar amount for solidarity and then add the debit for the solidarity. So that's really the last transaction that is done before you close the month. Is that correct?
Typically, that's exactly right. And then you would clear it, right? I mean,
Right, okay.
It's still a manual, it's a manual entry, but you're clearing it, right? I'm sorry, you're not clearing it because the bank didn't clear
Yeah.
it. You have to enter in your solidarity. You're right.
Okay.
That's the last thing that you do. You print before you even start this process. Matter of fact, before I even start doing reconcile, what I would do is first thing, preview financial report, get your suggested solidarity amount, go in and create an add debit for the solidarity for that amount. Then I would go through and start clearing transactions, and then I would close. It'd be in that sequence.
John,
Yes,
we
yes.
paid the solidarity payment showing in the, for example, September's the financial report, we pay following months,
You pay what? I'm sorry?
following months, the next
No.
month, not the month that I'm closing.
Oh, you pay, so you calculate, or is that an estimate?
Okay, when you click the preview financial report, it shows how much you should pay the solidarity.
Right.
I pay that amount in following months.
She pays it in arrears, and that's
Yes,
many,
Oh,
most conferences do pay it in arrears. In fact,
so you don't pay, so although this month, which is, let's say October 2020, it said you needed to pay whatever amount, you don't write that check for that amount then.
not in October, November, we write.
November is when you do it. I got you.
Yes,
Well, that's fine. I
yeah,
mean, whatever you decide to do.
yeah, most conferences that I have do it in arrears the following month, and the council actually assumes you're doing it in arrears. That you can do it
Oh,
either.
I need to tell my treasurer that. I think
Yeah.
he's been paying current. He's been
Yeah.
paying the current month.
So you can do it either way.
Yeah, I didn't know from a treasury guideline, forget about CMS. CMS will allow you to do it either way. That's easy. But from a treasurer's guidelines, you know, that they allowed you to pay in the rears like that. So that's good to know. I'll tell them. But the answer, I think, was Joanne. Did you ask that question before? Is she there? Somebody who asked the question about.
It was
what
me.
you-
Yeah.
Yeah, what you do is, you know, like I say, you do the preview, you get the amount, you do the debit, and then you clear, and then you close. Close is the last thing you do. But what I would do is make sure before I even pop that button, I would absolutely make sure this column is dead on with your bank statement. That's the key. If that's not dead on with your bank statement, don't even go near that button. Go find out why. And again, it could be, a good example is the bank charge you a fee. I don't know why, but maybe they charge you a debit for something, $2. You know, it's a small amount. Well, what you would do is, assuming that debit is correct, and it probably is, you would do an add debit for an adjustment. Adjustment debit for $2 to put it in balance with your bank statement, or else you're not going to be in balance because the bank has charged you $2. Or let's say that you have a check for $317 and the bank charged you cleared it for $317.53. So the bank is saying you have less than what you think you have. They charge you 53 cents more than what you have in your register. Once again, you have to put your bank statement in balance with CMS. In that case, I would make an adjustment. I don't think I would send it back and void it out and then tell the treasurer, then tell the caseworker resubmit it for 53 cents. You know, small things like that, not like hundreds of dollars. But those situations are going to happen. I think every treasurer that's on this call now can say that it's happened sometime during their, when they've been treasurer, where you get those fluky little things that come up. It isn't the standard stuff, that's easy. It's the stuff that comes up that probably only comes up once a year. And you have to handle them. And those are the real tricky ones. So I suggest for treasurers to confer with their district treasurers. That should be the very first place you go. And then if it becomes a system problem, we have a mechanism through the support community website where you can submit a support ticket. But that's only where after you've determined that there is a system problem here. Anything else on something we didn't cover that you really wanted to know about? Well, that's it. Well, I thank everybody. You all have a wonderful day, and thank you for attending this session. I appreciate it. Take
Thank
care.
you, John.
Thank you, John.
John.
Bye.
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 Very helpful.
Thank you.
Hey, John, you still